How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Mezcal Buzz Experience. It's been a while, but we're back, and I got another special guest. I'm your host, Marco Gutierrez with Mezcal Buzz, and I have with me Diego Garcia, Mezcal curator with his brand Mezcalnautas. Welcome. Diego, how are you?
Thank you very much, Marco, for having me here today. I'm very glad to meet you here because we met in a few days in a festival of Mezcales. Right. We talk about the project that I'm curating, this Curaduria Mezcalnautas, the impact that nowadays Mezcal have in culture, in pop culture, and also the challenges that traditional Mezcales have in everyday life of the people that produce them. No?
For sure, and that's one of the things that really interested me to your project is when you were speaking about how that traditional mezcal kind of loses a little bit of the attention because the popularity is growing so fast around mezcal and agave spirits. So I was really impressed with the setup you had, the different mezcales that you had curated. The only thing is that day I missed your talk. I know you gave a special talk during the presentation. What was that about, if you could fill us in?
I gave a lecture about the importance of having a law in mezcales tradicionales and to protect the mezcales tradicionales around Mexico, because that's the challenge nowadays with people that are in the business, to have responsibility. And that's the thing that bothered me a lot, that many people have not any responsibility in this business. We are dealing with culture, with biological heritage of Mexico, and that's the important thing. The important thing about that is to protect that biocultural heritage of Mexico.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you're doing that with your project. Again, it's called Mezcalnautas.
Yeah.
A plural or Mezcalnauta?
Mezcalnautas.
Mezcalnautas.
Curaduria Mezcalnautas.
So, and we'll get a little bit into when you're talking about mezcal tradicional. I'd really like to express that to the viewers so they get an understanding of what that is. But let's start with a tasting of one of the four selections of course. That you brought.
Yeah, we're tasting now Criollo. This is Criollo from Estado de Mexico, from a village called San Jose Chalmita. It's above Malinalco. If you have visited Mexico before, Malinalco, it's a touristic village of Mexico. This village, San Jose Chalmita, is above Malinalco. It's in a mountain chain. And it's produced by a master distiller called Cartucho. His name is Daniel. It's produced with agave angustifolia. And it's a very tasty one. I think it's a tastiest of the criollo that I have tasted in my visits to this community. It's produced with conic oven. It's also it's milled with an eggs. It's fermented with in wood, in wood, and also with spring water, and it's distilled in a Philippine distiller.
So this one here, if it were to be classified in one of the categories, we're looking at an ancestral product here.
Yeah. Well, I will explain a little bit about the traditional
Go ahead and
category.
Serve us some while we're talking.
I'm not.
Can I open it?
Yeah, of course, open it. I do not agree with that type of category. I will explain why.
Cool.
This is a category that doesn't have taken. Thank you. That doesn't take in account all the different diversities of productions of mezcal. You have to remember that Estado de Mexico has not been in the NOM on the origin of the denomination of origin of mezcal since 2012. That's when Estado de Mexico became part of this DO of mezcal. So this classification don't take in account all the productions of Estado de Mexico, also in Jalisco, also in Nayarit, also, for example, now in Sinaloa, that is now part of the DO, doesn't take in account all this diversity. So that's a very important point of this talk, to aware the audience that these regulations do not establish the correct panorama of all mezcales produced all around Mexico.
Right, because it's a very broad panorama
Yes,
of
exactly,
the history
exactly.
that exists
Yeah.
throughout, and to just say that these few states
Yeah.
are, I think the denomination of origin, though its intent is to help and protect spirits or art that's created, in a little way, it almost kind of affects it, right? I think it's caused
Yes,
a big
of course.
confusion of people. It's like,
It confuses the consumer, the final consumer. That's the point. So we have to have a regulation and laws that protect not also the producers but also the consumers. But because the final consumer doesn't understand when you present this kind of mezcal, for example, a criollo from Estado de Mexico, the difference between, for example, the productions of Oaxaca and these productions of Estado de Mexico. They don't have the panorama, and the laws and the regulations are so narrow that they cannot explain this diversity because they don't have the correct scientific approach of all that is in game, no? In jeopardy, because all this knowledge, all this traditional knowledge, it doesn't fits in these now regulations that are now applying in Mexico.
and so now we'll taste this criollo here.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning to me before we started, you like to taste
Yeah.
the
I
mezcal
always
in
like to
jícara.
move. Yes, I always like to move the mezcal in the jícara, so the beautiful and subtle aromas appear. You can, if you notice, a little bit of herb, like calites, like papaloquelite, and also banana.
Yeah, I get a
Yeah.
plantain for sure.
Yes, plantain is a lot in this mezcal. Also very sweet, like camote, Mexican camote.
Which comes from the agave, the cooked.
Yes, all the process of cooking and roasting the agave produce that sweetness. Also, agave angustifolia produce a lot of sweetness, for sure.
I'm gonna go for the mouthfeel here.
Yeah. And also in the mouth, it's herbal, sweet.
Herbal sweet. I get a little bit of a bitter
Of bitterness,
aftertaste.
yes. Aftertaste, yes.
And
bitter
an
one.
interesting thing, one of the things that I like about the criollo angustifolia, most people will know and recognize espadín, another one of the angustifolia.
Yep.
But if I'm not mistaken, criollo means something that's like endemic
Yep.
to the area, right?
Yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
similar to an espadín, but it's like a wild.
Yes, it's different. The variety is a different variety, but it's the same species. Okay.
Very
So,
cool.
to remember to the audience that agave angustifolia is a species that is from Sonora, the northern part of Mexico, to Chiapas. That's the reproduction area of agave angustifolia. So it's very wide and very different because of the different soils, climate, etc.
And another fun fact, again, correct me if I'm mistaken here, angustifolia or espadín, not endemic to Oaxaca.
Not endemic to Oaxaca, yes. That's also a very interesting debate because, for example, the law on the norm of production of mezcal protects agave angustifolia in Oaxaca. Agave angustifolia was introduced in Oaxaca.
For the demand, right?
Yes, for the demand, because also this agave, as also tequilana, are agaves that produce a lot of sugar. So it's easier to produce mezcal and to have agro-industrial production. That's the point in the 80s of Oaxacan government to produce a lot of mezcal. That was the solution to the production and to have the tequilization program of mezcal in Oaxaca. But the old producers called espadín maguey gobierno, government maguey, because it was the introduction of the government of Oaxaca of this species that produce a lot into the agro-industrial production, but also vanish the original population of agaves that was care of these traditional producers. For example, agave Karwinski, agave Poetatorum. And that's very sad because in all the central valleys of Oaxaca, you can have these green deserts of a lot of espadín introduced, but you don't have anymore this indigenous production of different varieties of agave and species of agave. And you have also trees in the mountains because they also produce a lot of agave in the 80s, of agave angustifolia, espadín, and all the wood of the mountains was to roast the agave and also to distill. So they banish all the ecosystem of the central valleys.
So I think that's a great point too to make to the audience, and especially because nowadays there's a lot of talk of sustainability and reforestation, but it goes well beyond just the reforestation of agave in this case of wild agave. Like you mentioned, it's a lot of consumption of wood and trees that get deforested for the production. I think a lot of times that kind of gets a little overseen. You know, everybody's just thinking like, oh, the agave is like the one raw material here, and like water is another source. Cool.
It's all the ecosystem. All the ecosystem is used to produce these fascinating mezcales. That's why it's very important to restore the ecosystems, but also restore the form of producing traditional mezcales. That's the key point to have a very prosperous business and to be responsible of what you're doing.
Let's go back a little bit. You're talking about traditional mezcales. So when we talk about, I know you're not a fan of the categories placing of mezcal. What do we mean and what are we talking about here when we say a traditional mezcal? Because again, people think of mezcal as the denomination of origin and not so much of the general term of the word of distilled agave spirits. So what do you mean and project when you say traditional mezcal?
Very important question. Many scholars in Mexico have or try to put in the table the importance of cultural heritage linked to environmental problem and also environmental resources with the production of mezcals. So when we talk about biocultural heritage, we're talking about this link, very complex link between the culture and the environment. That's why people very long ago began to produce mezcales. Not also mezcales, but also moles, but also artisanal pieces, etc., all part of the environment, but also of the culture of the regions, of the different regions. That's why we call traditional. Traditional means that is passed generation to generation. This knowledge is passed generation to generation, and they reproduce the same core of knowledge, but they modify certain things. For example,
because cultural values, there's different things behind it, the meaning of when it's made, how it's processed.
Yes.
Cool.
The French has a word that I think reflects that. It's called terroir, or terruño in Spanish, no? Territory. I think territory in English doesn't reflect that the word, because also terroir means the people that appropriates of that environment and produce cultural knowledge that is very important, no? Not only in beverage, not only in arts, not only in certain characteristic things, but it's a very complex network of knowledge. That's why we call these traditional mezcales, and also because it has a very unique form of understanding, and specifically in mezcales, it's called historic taste. It's a taste that is passed generation through generation and have a meaning of different things. For example, when people said, my grandpa used to distill tepestate, and that's the way tepestate has to taste. Wow, that's very complex. If you have been in Oaxaca, tepestate, it's very different depending on the region. Why they call that the real taste of tepestate? Well, because they have the knowledge but also the flavors that are transmitted generation to generation in a very complex way. So they defined all the aromas and taste that the Tempestati agave has have to have. And that's a very complex knowledge to have, to acquire. It's very, very, very difficult.
And it's only acquired through like tradition, like you
Yes,
said,
exactly.
generational knowledge.
Through generation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes.
Do you think we should taste
Of
the next one?
Of course, we are tasting. Talking about tradition.
Yeah, speaking of tradition, what do we
Yes,
have?
we have a papalote. It's an agave cupreata. This is distilled in clay pots. So it's very a unique form of distilling in Guerrero because it's also in this use in Guerrero. So it's very difficult to try this in clay pots nowadays in Guerrero. This is produced in a village called Tlacotepec. This is in Sierra de Guerrero. This is from if you are in the capital in Chilpancingo, you have a mountain, a chain of mountains that is called Sierra de Guerrero to Iguala, and then above Iguala. So this is in a village called Tlacotepec. So it's very interesting.
And right now, talking about the different villages, and we're talking about tradition. I'll put mine here. Another interesting fact, I guess, about mezcal is how colloquially and regionally a lot of the different agaves and mezcales will have different names or be called
exactly.
different.
That's also another important thing about these traditional mezcales that have very different names around the, not only in the regions but also, for example, in Oaxaca is so peculiar, no? They name in Zapotec language, but also in Mixteco, but also they name it in Nahuatl, depending on the region. So that's very interesting also, yes, the names.
Yeah.
The different names they give.
This one smells much different.
Yeah. So
good.
so different, yeah.
Very like sweet.
So sweet, yeah, that's so sweet.
Cupreata.
That's because all traditional mezcales is the difference between traditional mezcales and the traditional form of production from the other type of production, from the way the industry moves. They select only the mature agave. So that's why it's very, very sweet.
And I was told that in Guerrero or with the cupreatas, there's also the capon, which they cap the...
Yeah, capon is a technique used in different kinds of agave. Particularly in agave cupreata, they can have this technique for 3 years. That's very interesting.
Which capon, to explain to you guys, is when they cap the quiote, right? The stalk that's growing up, they'll cap it, but instead of going right into production, they continue to leave the agave to grow and accumulate sugars.
To accumulate sugar. Particularly in agave cupreata, this technique can have 3 years of having this agave in soil and not touching it until they harvest 3 years before this cutting of the quiote.
This one's really, really good. I like it.
Yeah.
Very sweet. It has almost like a licorice taste to me.
Yeah.
Black licorice.
Cherries, no? Those
Cherries.
black,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah. Cherries definitely there. Especially in the aroma.
Exactly.
So, Diego, going back to your project Mezcalnauta, what drove that passion for you? When did you get started, and what led you to do?
I started
this?
15 years ago.
Wow, it shows.
Yeah, a lot of time in this project, shaping this project, because I was afraid not to tell the truth to the audience. That's my fear. So to make sure
Why is that?
Because I've been through a lot in this world, and I think many people don't talk with the truth. They talk about the mystic and that the mezcal doesn't get drunk and it puts you magic and all that stuff. And I really I really hate that stuff because it's like also misleading the audience, also cheating the audience, cheating the consumer. So for me, is also this is a very strong project, and also I think the people that are in front of these brands have to be very educated about what they are saying and doing. And there are very few projects that also knows what are they doing and what they're saying about this patrimonial heritage that mezcal is. No? So that was my afraid. I was afraid about that. And
So a fear to be, what would the word be? So not blacklisted, but you're not going with the norm or like the conventional
Yes.
stories that are being said around
Yes,
this,
yes,
but
yes.
you're seeing it going in a direction
Yes.
that's not
a very different
positive.
direction, scientific, also responsible, also being able to pay the correct amount of money that mezcal is, the work that it represents. It's very difficult to have these kind of projects.
That's an interesting topic too, especially again with the growth of the industry or the attention it's getting now. So there's so many brands popping
Yes.
up, a lot of celebrity brands, and that's like one of those topics that's often touched on, is like where the money goes, where the attention's going. Like,
Exactly.
of course, celebrities and like businesses are getting in here because they see a cash cow. I mean, it's a growing industry, and
Yes.
as a business person, it's like a logical thing to do. It's like, hey, this is a good business to get into, but they're missing that point, which I think to your project is great too, because yes, it's very important to educate the consumer, but especially important also to educate the producers or the businesses or those ones providing, and for them to educate
Exactly.
as well to
It's
know.
a chain. It's such a chain. So that if you made this virtuous chain of having also the producer educate about the price that they have to have these agave distills, and also the consumer to be responsible about what is drinking.
Yeah.
I think is the virtuous chain, no? And not many people in the industry and not many people in this world is responsible about it. So
Right.
that's the shame about it. So it's not only being responsible individually. That's the point. And that's the point of my talk today.
So that's awesome, Diego. So one of the ways that I think you're moving forward and being able to educate the public, the consumer, and the professional is you have another project that you're kind of reaching a bigger audience.
Yes,
Tell me about it.
Well, beautiful people like my friend Bernardo and Eduardo believe in me, and we have this selection of traditional mezcales at Tlecan Mezcaleria. It's a beautiful project.
Here in Mexico City?
Here in Mexico City, in La Colonia Roma, in Álvaro Obregón 228.
Awesome. And we have Bernardo here
Yes,
today.
Bernardo
If you
is
want to
here.
come here, and we'll talk a little bit more about this project you guys
Yes.
are going. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Thank
good.
you for coming.
How are you?
Pretty good. I think I'll raise this up a little bit for you.
Okay.
But welcome, Bernardo.
Thank you.
And yeah, tell us. Let's open up with another taste. We went
Yes,
halfway
of course,
through.
of course.
Let's
We're now
so we'll
taking-
Perfect.
great way to start, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you this other for.
Yeah. Well, we were starting. We wanted to build a mezcal bar, and with a slightly different approach, which is to kind of make the experience a little bit more sophisticated, because I think a lot of the mezcalerias rely on a kind of, we say rascuache aesthetic here in,
Okay.
like
Define that for me. That for me, that's a new one.
rascuache is like it's like a little bit low class, maybe like
rough.
Yeah, rough, and exploiting a little bit of the idiosyncrasia of Mexico. And
Yeah, I hear you.
but I think as you were talking about diversity, and I think there's a place for a more sophisticated mezcal bar with tasting approach with a atmosphere, a little bit more elegant, better service without being too stiff. That's a fine line that we're trying to walk there.
Love it. I love it. And so can't wait to visit. And as we do that, would you like to tell us this third selection here?
This selection here is from the Mixteca Baja. This is Espadilla. Also is agave angustifolia. Talking about the difference between agave angustifolia. The first one was an agave angustifolia from Distillation, Mexico, and this is from Puebla, from Mixteca Baja. This is the village is called Santa Maria Soyatla, master distiller Asuncion Matilde. This is also made always like the traditional mezcales, conic oven. The mill is by hand with an axe. The fermentation is in the ground with recovered in wood. The water is also from spring water, filled in distiller with a refresher. I will talk about the refresher a little bit more. And this is from Santa Maria Soyatla, as has been said. It's also very, very different.
Yeah, very herbal.
Maybe if you can tell Marco, will be nice to the audience, the difference between Criollo and Espadilla. Nevertheless, they are agave angustifolia. They are so different in tasting, no?
Same species, but very different.
Very, very different.
Just in the aroma's very different as well. I get a lot also like wet earth.
Yes.
In this one.
Yeah, petrichor a little bit.
Petrichor, yeah, that's a word I learned is for that. I would always be like, smells like wet dirt. Like there's a word for that.
Yeah, petrichor. Yeah. This is another thing that we like to do in Tlecan, which is to celebrate the ephemeral quality of the different mezcales that we have. Yeah. Even though it's a tradition, as Diego was saying, and it's a flavor, it keeps evolving and it's always different. And we embrace that difference and ephemerality of our products. When the batch is gone, the batch is gone. We don't want to standardize anything, because I think that's a great quality that mezcal has. It's so different and always changing, right?
Always changing, and also very people have the idea that in tradition there's no innovation. That's incorrect.
Yes.
Yeah,
there's always innovation, because there's another individual that's making the mezcal. Not also another individual, but also different conditions, for example, in the factories. Mm-hmm. Although they are in nearby settings, they are so different. Because the recipe is different. Because the people that understand that, also the cultural and environmental process is another individual.
And I think people forget sometimes, or we think of tradition, it's like tradition is something that's alive, right? It's not tradition, something like you said it with other individuals. Yes. It does continue to evolve. It does continue.
Yes, of course.
We don't lose sight of the original tradition, but I love that approach that you guys have on that.
It's an oral tradition, so it's not set. Yes. Mm-hmm. So it kind of changes just by the retelling. Each retelling of the story is different, and the new generation will interpret it differently, and he will have a different ideal of the product, and then it will change naturally, right?
Do you think it changes to document tradition? That was a great point, and it's like an oral tradition, and traditions, it adds a I don't want to say like a value, but an importance to an oral tradition, because if you're not, si no lo cuidas, it can disappear. So it's like, it gives it that importance of it. So do you think documenting, for example, an oral tradition is a great way, documenting whether it's writing it in a book, someone's notes, through video nowadays, a lot of different content, does that change?
We're now having a project now with Bernardo. Bernardo is a great producer of multimedia content. So we're now documenting all this to share with the public. That's the next project we have.
But it's just a snapshot, right? Like it has to have a time, temporal quality in which that you document, but they won't research documentation. They will continue their oral tradition,
Yes.
even though you said it in a book. Because
Yeah.
they're not going to get a book from some external.
And I think one thing you say that's super important too, and it goes into a lot of things nowadays, is the point of context. Because yeah, totally, somebody could pick up a book and not understand the context of
Yes.
who it came from, when it came from.
Yes.
That I think is like one of the hugest factors in a lot of things orally being told, or things that happen, like time, right? Even nowadays that we see the whole like Me Too movement as an example, like, oh, this happened 30 years ago.
Or-
Damn, and you want to treat it like it happened today. It's tough. And
Or
I don't want to get
it's
into
like,
that.
look,
But
I think the best example is the Bible, right? Because
Oh, yeah, great.
we kind of forget that it was written 2,000 years ago, 3,000 or 4,000 years ago in a geographical place with a kind of a culture. And then we extrapolate from that, and we forget about the context. These are people in the desert.
it's been interpreted to many
And,
different
and
ways.
also
Yeah.
the missed parts in the translations. Well,
Yeah,
of course.
From the Arameo to Latin to Greek, well, it loses a lot, no? So that's the point, and that's the also I think the invitation to people in the United States to live the culture of Mexico. That's the
Yeah.
best way to understand about traditional mezcales.
So give me like a little, a quick rundown. Like, what's the experience like when someone visits the mezcaleria? And tell me how to pronounce it again, because with the T, Ticla?
Tlecan.
Oh,
Tlecan.
Tlacan?
In Nahuatl,
Uh-huh.
you know, Nahuatl, it ends in TL, but it's actually pronounced tl.
Tl.
So it's not tl, it's tl. So Tlecan. But you can say Tlecan, you can say whatever you want.
Tlecan.
Like
What does it mean?
Tenochtitlan, like Nahuatl always has the accent in the second to last syllable.
Okay.
But when it translates into Spanish, sometimes it goes to the last one, like Tenochtitlan,
Yeah.
which is actually Tenochtitlan. And Tlecan is Tlecan, but you can say Tlecan and it's perfectly fine.
So like my name in Nahuatl is like Marcuatl or something.
Maybe, yeah, Marco.
Um,
Yeah, so the
yeah.
experience is, it feels a little bit upscale. It's not terribly fancy, but it has a lot of design thinking into the whole atmosphere of the place. It has this, it's all the same material. It's red concrete with a little bit of stone mixed in, and it's all the same thing up to a certain height. And then you can see like the modern, like the building, you can see the ducts and you can see the lights and you can see everything. It's above that because we don't want to pretend that it's an original, appropriation. We
Sure.
made it purposefully scenographic so that you know it's not. We're not trying to pretend it's an original thing, but it is inspired by the Aztec culture, Mexicas. And the place where it is, we're in Tenochtitlan, and we're
Yeah.
kind of paying homage to it, right? And then, our staff is trained. They know the flavors. They know they can guide you into tasting mezcal if you want, or they can leave you alone if you already know what you're doing, which is perfectly
Okay.
fine, right?
So it's definitely a place that you could walk in, enjoy a couple mezcales off a menu that you'd like to try,
Yep.
and you have an experience that you could provide with trained professionals that could guide the consumer
Yep.
through an experience.
Exactly.
And we will improve this tasting in certain days that we will have, for example, only a tasting of cenizo, for example, of cenizo from agave duranguensis. For example, Wednesday of cenizo.
Miércoles de cenizos.
And we will try only cenizo from different regions of Durango.
Love that approach as
And
well.
we will do with, for example, with papalote, we'll do with the pestates, etc. So they can taste what I have said before, different kinds of approaching the flavor of the pestate or cenizo or papalote. For example, the ones that they gave you in the fest, aguerrido from Chilapa, is very different from the Sierra
Yeah.
Guerrero. Totally different, totally profile flavors. Yes, so
Yeah.
that's why we will have this days, the people can taste different kinds of the same agave, but different approaches, of traditional approaches to that flavors.
Sorry, I love that. And before I forget, for myself and for the audience, do you guys have a social media website, or where can somebody find the?
We're on Instagram, Tlecan Mezcal,
Spell it out for.
Tlecan Mezcal.
Cool.
So yeah, you can look for us on Instagram, and we are continuously posting and updating. We are gonna do, like Diego was saying, like a photo shoot of the maestros. We have them kind of on the spotlight because all our mezcal through Diego comes to us direct from the producers. They're paid what they ask, and we try to be fair in that sense. And we only buy small batches, and we're not like industrializing, tequilizing the industry, right?
And I think that in of itself, it's an awesome thing to do. Talking about small batch production is, like you mentioned, the different taste of the different regions, and even the different taste of the different batches. Like I have the 2018 batch of this maestro, of this, and he's like, oh, well, I have the 2021. There's gonna be some differences.
Yes,
and then going back to the tradition, like you said, it'll taste of that.
Yes.
I feel like it's kind of listening to music, right? Like you
Yes.
hear the artist,
Exactly.
they've been recording, and then you hear them live.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you hear them at another live. Same feeling you get, same quality, like the same, it's that, it's that artist. But it's something a little bit different about each performance.
Yes,
and I feel like that's what the mezcales do. And right on.
It's not the same, for example, listening to Metallica in the 80s to listen to Metallica nowadays.
No.
Yeah.
They have an evolution.
Yeah, I also want to mention that it's you can also go to Tlecan and have a good time. It's not just like an educational thing. It's a bar. There's music, and you can have a good time as well, right?
Yeah, and I love that balance because it's interesting because talking about like the consumers, and we're talking about like educating the consumer, but it's also about like the experience, right?
Yep.
So some consumers might not care so much. Like, I don't know where it came from. I like this one. Like, I just want to enjoy it.
That's perfectly fine as well, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
We won't get in your way of your own experience.
Yeah.
But if you need us, we're there, right?
Awesome. And when did you guys open the Mezcaleria?
We opened originally in January 2020, and then we had like a huge pandemic. So there was a pause, and then we opened 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yes, reopened 2 weeks ago, and we're ready to welcome you whenever you want.
Awesome. Definitely gonna have to make my way down there. I have to do that. Take you guys along for a visit. We'll do a little tour of the Mezcaleria.
Yes.
I still have trouble trying to print Tlecan.
Tlecan. No, that's good. Tlecan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does it mean, Tlecan?
A place of fire in Nahuatl. So Tletl is fire, and can is like a place, right?
Cool. I love that. I'm actually excited. I can't wait to get over there. And I love the information that cumulative here is between the two of you that we're learning, and for the viewers to come visit or check you guys out online. It's a lot of, I'm definitely a seeker of knowledge. I'd like to say I like to read and get involved into things of asking why or how, and so this is an amazing project. Should we go to this final one?
And also, if they have questions, please leave them in the comments.
In the comments,
We can have another chat with Marco. Anyway.
And we're also in Tlecan in the Instagram where we can answer your questions if you want, you need.
So that one's clean. I'm gonna actually step up and grab another one really quick.
Thank you.
So good.
And which one are
So
we?
now we are tasting a Lamparillo. This is, Durango,
Oh, you got that one, this one?
to say, is the second state in Mexico that has the biodiversity of agaves. So in Durango, you will find a lot of different agaves, complex flavors. This is produced by master distiller Gilberto Roldán. This is a producer that I have the fortune to call friend. This is also produced in oven, in a conic oven. This is also milled with an axe, fermented in wood. Is spring water and river water, spring and river water. The distillery is a Philippine one, and is from Nombre de Dios, Durango.
This one definitely has like a chile smell to me.
Yeah,
Big time.
also
Green pepper.
Green pepper, yes, like jalapeno. A lot of jalapeno, chile serrano.
You guys, this has been an awesome experience, and just whenever you can and find different mezcales and you're starting to taste the different ones and experiencing them, man, it's eye-opening to see the differences and like
Yes.
the smells. And
That's the purpose of Curaduria. That's the purpose also of Tlecan, to have different, not also states, but regions of the country. So you can appreciate this kind of differences, all varieties that can mezcals give.
yeah, each one of these has been different from itself. Like there hasn't been
No,
you won't confuse them.
no. That's why we refer as mezcales, because they're so different.
Yes.
Not mezcal. It's not one single beverage. It's mezcales.
Yes.
There are a lot of mezcales.
Yeah, it's not like, I mean, you can like mezcal in general, but it's better to just like some mezcales.
Yeah.
They're all different. They're very, very different. It's like, like wine, pretty much.
And I think it's a great experience too, what you guys are doing, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I hate mezcal. Like they had one bad mezcal, probably like a commercial one at a get-together or a party, and they're like, no.
From an industrial production in Matatlan, Oaxaca, and they say that they hate mezcal. But they never tried from the Estado de Mexico, Guerrero, Oaxaca, real Oaxaca, Lamparillo from Durango, or something like that, no?
A question I have is, what are the different degrees of alcohol we tasted here?
Well, we been through 50 to 53.
Between 50 and 53.
50 and 53, Lamparillo has 53, Criollo 50, Papalote 50, and also Espadilla 50.
That's another thing that the commercial ones are kind of, it's kind of sad that they bring them down to 39. I've even seen 36s, and they just put water in it, and it is a mezcal after all, but it's watered down in order to sell more volume, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
and the other sad part about that, I think, is that they do it with the intention for a larger market, a softer mezcal. But I'll tell you right now, not one of these mezcales that we tasted here was like overly astringent or like the high alcohol taste. They've all been very smooth. They've all been very flavorful in the different, whether it's the aromas and the taste that we have. So don't be afraid of the high alcohol volume that you're going to see in the mezcales, because it's not going to be like, oh, I just taste alcohol here. Like, no way. You'll taste the 38. That's much harsher with an alcohol taste than.
That's why these people, we call them master distillers. That's why. And also, we have to say that think about the process of distillation. In the process of distillation, not only the alcohol is the first part that became condensated, also the aroma and flavors are concentrated in the first part. So if you start to boil in the distiller, you will add more water and water. You will dilute only the mezcal or the whiskey or the traditional alcohol we are talking about. That's the important part of this. All the traditional beverage, all the traditional distillates are above 45 degrees. Because the aroma and concentration of flavors are better in that alcohol percentage.
It's a sweet spot, right?
Yes.
A sweet spot of alcohol. Yeah.
That's why. That's the reason. That's the scientific reason.
It's a very good one. Yeah, and it's a slow drink. Like, obviously, if you shoot it, you're gonna make a whiskey face, but it's not. It's not made for that. It's a slow drink.
Slowly,
and that's definitely a great point too, because if you shoot it, you're not gonna have a good time.
No, you'll just skip all the steps and just get drunk.
So I think must have a second episode.
Yeah,
Because
I think
there's a
there
lot-
could be
a
several
lot
ones.
of things. Yeah, a lot of things to say.
I think, there's definitely a lot of things to say around the topic or the industry. I think maybe start to have some more focused talks. I think
Yes.
this was a really great one, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
But I think it'd be great to continue conversations
Yes.
or just sit and enjoy a mezcal. I'd love to do one at your location to come visit you.
course.
Maybe we could do one there.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, leave
Yes,
them
of
in the
course.
comments
Leave them in the
below.
comments.
One more time, give us your handles, your social medias for your different, where to find you guys. Start with you, Diego.
Curaduria Mezcalnautas is also in Instagram. You can direct message me, please, if you want mezcales or if you want information. We're happy to attend your message. And please, always in the United States, verify that the mezcales are sold in the United States can have certain information. For example, the name of the producer, the type of the production, also the name of the village that from the mezcal is. Please check that information. You will be a responsible consumer and demand that the people that sell the mezcales have this information in the brand. That's my final comment. Thank you very much.
Cool.
We are at Tlecan Mezcal on Instagram as well, and tlecan.com on the web. And we also, I'm always checking for your direct messages or whatever, and we're there, and we would like to welcome you at the mezcaleria so that you can have a great time. The experience that you choose is the one that we will have, right?
Awesome. And one more time, the address where you're located?
It's Álvaro Obregón 228, Local 2.
En La Roma?
En La Roma Norte, yes.
Roma Norte, Mexico City. And once again, I'm your host, Marco Gutierrez, here on Mezcal Buzz. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and follow the accounts here. And if you're in Mexico City, you have to make your way down there and leave your questions and comments below. And as always, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Thank you.